Welcome to the European Forum Alpbach. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska and you're watching TVP World, and it is my absolute pleasure to welcome my next guest, Josef Aschbacher, Director General of the European Space Agency, to talk about space and to talk about Europe's place when it comes to that very race. In The Economist, you said Europe must play to win, not just to play nice in a new space race. Keeping up is not enough. And so, as the boss of the ESA, what is your plan of action to boost Europe when it comes to that very race?
I mean, there's still a lot to do. We are actually quite good in a number of domains. For example, in Earth observation, the Copernicus program, after the very famous Polish scientist named, is one of the world-leading programs where Europe is leading. And Europe has something that other countries don't have, not even the United States or China or any other country. Nobody has something comparable. So there we are really good. Galileo is another example where we have a world-leading program. So you see we are excellent on a number of domains. We have engineers, scientists that are top of the class. However, when you compare the big picture and see where ESA and Europe stands compared to the United States or the global economy, space economy, we have about 10% of the global space economy. The United States has 60%, China 15%. So you see we are 1/6 of investment of the United States in space. And of course, with 1/6, you cannot do the same thing than with 6 times as much. So that means that we are excellent in some segments, but in others, we really have to catch up. Really have to catch up means develop technology, big programs, bolder programs, and of course, the holy grail of exploration is really getting humans into space, and this is something that Europe today is not yet capable of doing on our own.
Do you think it's possible that in the future we're going to be able to launch people into space ourselves here in Europe?
Technically, we would be able to do it. We have many of the building. We have certainly the expertise. We do not yet have the capacity. We don't have a space capsule. We don't have a rocket that is transporting astronauts. But we could, if there is a political requirement and a political vision, an endorsement, then yes, we could do it. Today, as you know very well, the only nations that can fly astronauts into space is the United States, China, Russia, and soon India. And if India is capable of bringing astronauts into space, why Europe is not doing it?
It's also a great technological market in India.
It is a very great technology, absolutely right. It's something also where you show to the world that you can do the almost impossible or the very difficult things, and that's also good for an economy or for countries, because you show to the world that you are capable of doing the most difficult things, like launching astronauts into space. Meaning that it's, of course, the technology development, the economic aspects of it, but also the benefits that come into other sectors, into engineering, into IT, into quantum technologies, and so on. So that means once you are capable of demonstrating that you can do, for example, human spaceflight, then of course this helps in many other domains as well.
Upon the return of Polish astronaut Sławomir Uznański-Wiśniewski, whom we spoke about earlier before the interview, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said, quote, "We have ambitions to build a national satellite operations system. The country must be more active in this area. This is related to our project for the European Space Agency to decide to build its center in Poland." Are we going to have a center in Poland?
I really like the ambition of Prime Minister Tusk. I think he's absolutely right to express a strong vision and a strong ambition. It is true that we have discussed this during my last visit to Warsaw, when I was actually bringing the astronaut Sławomir Uznański back into Warsaw on his hero's welcoming. I have to say this was a wonderful moment, because I could see how proud Poland as a country is having a national hero with Sławomir and really celebrating his success. But yes, on the side of that meeting, I had also of that event, I had meetings with some politicians, and yes, we have been discussing this as well. In order to establish such a center, of course, this is not so easy.
It's not so easy, especially with everything that's happening in Europe.
But I think it is very good to express the ambition, because what the Prime Minister is expressing is that defense and security and defense and space are becoming extremely important. I don't need to explain this to the people in Poland. And this is really something where space can be a spearhead and a symbol of also investing into defense capabilities and bringing space and defense together. And that's exactly what this center is about, to have a European center or European capability that could be a focal point for defense and space in combination, because defense and space go together. You need space capabilities for defense or for defending your citizens, your country. And yes, there's a very strong logic. We are having a proposal that we are preparing right now for the ministerial conference in November. And yes, it all depends on how the member states, including Poland, are subscribing to these proposals.
So how do you think, because we mentioned Sławosz Uznański-Wiśniewski, how do you think that Axiom 4, the mission, actually changed the way we look at space exploration as of now? And what has changed? Because it has been a big step. It has been a big event.
It has been a big step, and I can only congratulate Poland for having made this decision to work with us and Axiom to fly Sławosz into space. But it's much more than just flying an astronaut, with all due respect for Sławosz and his wonderful achievements. It's really a waking up of the country and show to the world and show to Europe and the world how capable Poland is. And I really have to say, when I've been many times now in Poland as part of my cooperations and definition of future projects within ESA, I've been, every time I was there, so impressed how big the steps are and the progress is in Poland in particular. Every time there are new buildings, there are new shops, there are new hotels, there's a new infrastructure, but also in space you have made enormously fast progress. And I have to say, really congratulations, well done. And I think Sławosz's mission was really a symbol that Poland is making a big step in technology and also in its image within the European context.
Does the space race still define a standard of power here on Earth?
It does. Whatever happens in space is reflected down on Earth, or even the other way around. The space powers on Earth are also the ones that are having very big, large projects in space. So yes, this is connected, and you see it also today geopolitically. You have the United States, you have China, you have Russia still with an enormous capability, and then you have Europe, Japan, India, and other nations. And yes, there is a reflection of it, but I would actually turn it around. If you really want to become an economic power, you have to be a space power, because you have to demonstrate that you can do the most difficult space projects in order to really also build up a strong economy. So space really serves to help also powering up people and the economy, and this go very well hand in hand together.
And how do you think, to what extent, the politics and everything that's been happening, obviously in Europe we have a great push to spend more for defense. How do you think the geopolitics and politics in general affect the ESA?
It does always. Politics is everywhere, but also in space, because it does show on what we see today. And really, Poland, I think, is at the forefront, because you are actually bordering Ukraine, and you see it very, very well on every single day what happens and how big the threat is, and also how big the geopolitical tensions are between East and West. And what I really see is that today, especially with the uncertainty that we see geopolitically, it is a realization of Europe to really get on its feet and strengthen its own capabilities in defense, obviously, but also in space. And therefore, I'm convinced that this is now the moment where Europe has to reflect on where to go and what to do and how to develop itself in the next decades, because these things, of course, are long-term decisions. Defense is one segment that we have to strengthen our capability, and nobody is doubting that. Space and defense go together, and space also has another dimension, which is a very interesting one, that the economy is growing extremely fast. The space economy today is about 500 billion euros worth of money. It grows to 1.8 trillion in the next decade. That means it grows by about 10% per year. And that's amazing how many sectors of the economy are growing by 10% per year. There's only a very few. So it's also economically interesting, and obviously also for the defense and capabilities of a country, but also for resilience and strength of a population. So yes, space is actually a domain that is really symbolic of building up strength and autonomy of a country or of a region.
I'm very happy that you mentioned the economics behind it, because I wanted to bring a quote from Ars Technica, which is a publication, an independent publication of all things space related. And they said, quote, "SpaceX has surpassed the European Space Agency and its institutional partners in almost every way when it comes to the accessing space and providing secure communications. Last year, for example, SpaceX launched 134 orbital missions. Combined, Europe had 3. SpaceX operates a massive constellation of more than 7,000 satellites, delivering broadband internet around the world. Europe hopes to have much more modest capability online by 2030, serving the continent at a cost of $11 billion. Does ESA have the capacity to still be in competition when it comes to the development of private sector, for example, in the US?
Let me clarify one point here. I mean, you compare SpaceX with the European Space Agency. One is a private company and the other one is a public entity.
That's exactly the brunt of my question.
Exactly. But
is there still space to be actually competing with the private sector?
First of all, what we do also within ESA is develop European companies to be stronger and develop strong space programs. So NASA has done exactly the same in the United States, and SpaceX has been developing out of investments and support through NASA. And in Europe, we do some very similar things. But yes, it is true that SpaceX is dominating, not only against Europe or compared to Europe, compared to America.
All the other markets as well,
China,
when it comes to space exploration,
Japan,
obviously.
to many in launches and in the provision of Starlink signal. This is true. China actually is building up a similar constellation. Europe is building up a similar constellation. But today, yes, it's absolutely true that SpaceX is dominating. But that's exactly what we are doing in Europe, what we have to do, because we cannot depend on one particular commercial company overseas. We need our autonomous capability in Europe, and this is exactly what we're doing at the European Space Agency. We are proposing programs where we build up our strength and our capability. I mentioned before Copernicus and Galileo. SpaceX is not working on that. They don't work at all, and we have a global dominance in this domain. So yes, in some segments SpaceX is great. In some other segments, ESA is great and is probably the best there worldwide. So you have to really see this
compare
all
and contrast.
Exactly, you have to see this all in context and see who is good here, who is good there. But absolutely right, we have in general to catch up and to make sure that we get more autonomy, more strength for Europe.
So, as a final question, from here onwards, where would you, as Director General of ESA, would like to see ESA be in, let's say, 5 years?
I would like a very strong Poland in ESA. No, but Poland is a very strong country, but all our member states are really putting together a program proposal. We put them together, but they will be funded by the various member states. So what I really would like to achieve in 5 to 10 years from today is that Europe is really stepping up in space and is using space as a tool, as a mechanism to power up society, create new dreams, create new visions, create new projects where Europe is really proud of, and really use space, just like America has done it in the 60s with the Apollo program, use space as a trigger for a Europe that can show to the world what it can do and makes Europe stronger as a society and as an economy.
And so, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed for that happening. Thank you so very much for joining me today. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Josef Aschbacher, Director General of European Space Agency, was my guest. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Thank you so much for tuning in, but please do stay here on TVP World for more.